Welcome to I Talk to Ghosts, the podcast that gleefully shares the frightening and the fascinating. I'm your haunted host, Jennifer, a teller of ghost stories and a spirit medium. Not only will I share my spirit work as a medium with a guest reading tonight, I will also be telling you a few chilling ghost stories. Tonight's theme, haunted statues. Now, I picture a midnight garden with a few elegant, stoic statues in the shadows that may or may not move when you happen to glance at them. Would you linger there with me in the moonlight to find out? At the very least, keep me company for a while as I tell you a few stories. The spooky begins now. I currently live in New Jersey with my best friend. I used to live in Long Island, so my friend and I would go back frequently so I could see my old friends. Whenever we made the trip, we would take what we would call the spooky route. We would drive past the Kings Park Psychiatric Center, the Stillwell Preserve, and Cold Spring Harbor. Nothing out of the ordinary happened. We were just looking for anything scary. We were calling it a night after we drove around Cold Spring Harbor, and I put my friend's address into the GPS. As we followed this map, to the left of us was a cemetery. As we drove past the cemetery in the dark, we noticed that a Mother Mary statue was abnormally lit up, as if it had spotlights all around it, but the only light shining was from right in front of it. And there was two people in front of it. One was kneeling and the other was standing in front of the statue. Both my friend and I asked out loud, what were two people doing there at midnight in a cemetery? I suggested they were praying, but that answer didn't sit right with us, so we turned around to investigate. We parked on the road, the cemetery again right in front of us. As we looked at these two people in front of the statue, we noticed that parts of their clothing were frozen in mid-air. One of them had something similar to a veil, as if it was waving in the wind but stuck there. The other had a blanket over them that did the same thing. We yelled at them to get their attention, but they didn't reply. So my friend and I got really curious as to whether or not they were people or statues or something else. We pulled into the parking lot for the cemetery at the front and aimed our headlights at the two figures. I can't explain this part properly, but these two figures morphed through themselves to turn around. They never physically turned around. Their backs phased into their fronts to look at us, and both of us got an overwhelming feeling of dread, evil, and panic. We left promptly, going down the rest of the road we were originally on. Except our GPS decided it would be great to reroute us back to the cemetery. The cemetery wasn't in our map's route. We didn't mark it on the map or anything. We even canceled our map and re-entered my friend's address, and the map still routed us back to the cemetery. To this day, his phone is still screwed up when it comes to location routing. We went back the following week to ask around about any paranormal activity that happens on the grounds, except the man that saw us when we pulled up locked himself inside the office. We walked up to the Mother Mary statue and confirmed that there was only one light stationed there, right in front, no other lights around the back or sides of it. And there were two dead patches of grass in the exact spots where the figures had been. We just moved into a new house, and one of the first things we noticed was how eclectic the backyard was. There are statues of all types lined up in the flower bed along the back fence, as well as what I'm now thinking of as creepy stone circles. At first, they looked like they were supposed to be used for fire pits, but they weren't dug out, and the grass inside the circles hasn't overgrown with the rest of the yard. When we first went out there to clean out the old tenant's things, we noticed there was a statue knocked over. It was tucked away in the far side of the yard, and you probably wouldn't notice it unless you were specifically looking for it. My boyfriend and I both attempted to lift and stand the statue up, but no matter how hard we pulled it, it wouldn't budge, and eventually we gave up and forgot about it. Today, 1 month later, we noticed that the statue was not only standing, but moved to the edge of the flower bed. My least favorite part of this is that it looks completely unnatural for the layout of the yard, and it's facing my bedroom. It may be nothing, but I know that neither of us moved that statue. When I was a kid, younger than 12, my mom took me to visit her friend at their apartment. It was decorated in an odd fashion. Tapestries hung all over the place, with old antique furniture and knickknacks lining the walls. It all had a weird feeling to me, and I was thankful that the visit was a short one. On our way out the door, my mom pointed to a statue they had in their living room. It was that of a man with a beard. Its eyes looked straight ahead, and it held a walking stick that connected to the base of the statue. It was about half my height, carved from a dark solid wood, and was sort of primal looking. I remember thinking, I really hope they don't offer to let her take that. And they gave it to her. I felt uncomfortable sharing the car ride back home with this statue. My mom was raving about how cool it was all the way home. I couldn't have been less happy. After we returned home, she placed the statue down next to the fridge in the kitchen, right outside the entryway. That was really unfortunate because our kitchen was the center of our house. Anywhere you wanted to go, you usually had to walk through the kitchen. So I told my mom how much I disliked the statue and how I really hated the idea of it being in the space that it was. My mom told me I was being silly, and there it stayed. I didn't get a wink of sleep that night. I couldn't stop thinking about that statue being on the other end of the house, and it terrified me. It made me feel unsafe. I don't know what I found to be so threatening about it, but the next day, my grandmother agreed with my feelings. She told my mom the statue made her very uneasy and it had negative energy. My mom shook it off because my grandmother always has strong opinions and feelings on things. My mom told her she was overreacting and that she wasn't getting rid of the statue. I felt constant anxiety. I would often refuse to leave my bedroom in the morning after having violent nightmares about this statue. During the day, when I walked through the kitchen, I would literally push my back against the wall and edge around the room to avoid getting near this thing. In time, even my mom's friends agreed that the statue kind of weirded them out too. I hated it, and despite how much it scared people, my mom still wouldn't get rid of it. Though eventually, she agreed to move it into the living room, in a more secluded space. One night, I was sitting in the dining room doing my homework, and my mom was in the living room with her friend. I started to hear whispering. Cryptic, overlapping, incoherent whispers. I immediately knew the voices didn't belong to my mom or her friend. I went into the living room to ask them if they heard anything, and before I could speak, the look on their faces told me everything. My mom asked me to come closer to her and said, "We hear them too." We all agreed the sound was unmistakably close to us, and it was clear as day. The source of the sound had come from, you guessed it, around the statue. We all sort of stared at the figure for a moment. I don't remember what else was said after that, but my mom still didn't get rid of the statue. My nightmares continued. My anxiety grew worse and worse. Bad things continually happened in my house. My mom was pregnant sometime around then and had to be hospitalized, so I went to live with my grandmother for a bit. I told her all about how my mom never got rid of that statue, and I never felt safe since. I told her about the nights I felt someone looming over me, and the times I locked myself in the bathroom because I heard noises coming from it. After my mom delivered my baby brother, I moved back home. Right before I did, my grandmother confessed to me that she had burned the statue while my mom was still in the hospital and didn't care how my mom felt about it because I didn't deserve to live in fear over anything. Once the statue was gone, my mom finally agreed weird things had happened. I'm finally able to walk through my house again without maneuvering around the thing. But still, to this day, something always feels off about our house. Are you enjoying the podcast? Please leave a kind review or share it with a friend. These small actions take only a few moments, but they immensely help support the podcast. Thank you for supporting my work and the podcast. Hello and welcome back to I Talk to Ghosts. My guest this evening is Jessica. Jessica, how are you doing? Welcome to your reading.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here. A little nervous, but awesome.
Oh, I am excited to have you here too, and it's completely fine to be a little nervous. We don't do stuff like this every day, right? Well, maybe I do more than most, but I can completely understand the nerves. But yeah, everything is going to go well, and I already feel that there are multiple people here for you, and it's quite layered, and there's a bit of a variety. So, I have my notes here, first impressions. I do want to talk about a older gentleman first. I know we were talking beforehand. This does feel like your grandfather. The feeling he is coming in with for me, is an emotional man, a big heart. He had a big heart to him. And what he tells me is he loved to love.
With me, he did, yeah.
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 Do you happen to know if he had some nice handwriting?
For cursive and an older gentleman, yes.
Yes. I'm seeing it kind of tight looped, kind of very neat.
Yep.
That was coming through for me. I'm also getting the impression of mingling in a large common area. It feels like a dance hall type place. Does this make sense to you, or is this something you'd have to investigate?
I'd have to investigate that one.
No problem at all. Okay. I was being shared a memory of you being pulled on a sled.
Was it a wooden sled?
It was a red one.
I think that's my dad.
Sometimes, and I love to explain this when I get visuals, they may not be complete, because when you receive something psychically and then you're your mind's eye gets that information and interprets it for you, it might not be 100% accurate. It did seem like a plastic sled to me.
Yeah.
And he was also talking about how you could lose your mittens.
I was professional at that.
Yeah, you're a professional mitten loser.
Yeah.
Okay.
The strings that went under the jacket.
Mm-hmm. You were telling me that you had listened to a message from the spirits that you thought your grandfather had come through with that, with the message that, with coins, because I was seeing a bunch of coins.
My grandmother worked at a school, and my grandfather worked at the school too, but he had retired, but he hung out at the school with all the teachers. And he would take his change and throw it underneath the swings. But me being in kindergarten, pre-K, would go digging through the pebbles and finding all the pennies and thinking it was the greatest thing ever. And we would collect all the coins that I would find in a giant ceramic piggy bank. And I do mean 3-foot ugly ceramic pig. And we bought my first car with it when I turned 16 with the change.
That's wonderful. That is very significant. I love when details come together like that. Now, you mentioned your grandmother working at the school. Hearing her laughter and when I'm sitting with this impression, I wrote down teacher energy because I'm hearing her voice echo down the hallway, and I know it's not a carpeted place, so I immediately think school. And it's almost like you could find her by following her voice.
Yeah. I would follow her from classroom to classroom. With some classrooms, I'd stay in reading, like Beauty and the Beast or something like that. And then I would have to find her by the sound she was making.
Her personality is coming through that she loved to talk. She was good at talking, and she was also generous with her ideas and thoughts. I think it would be hard to find a moment in the school when she wasn't talking, in a good way.
She had a good group of people that she worked with.
What's that noise?
Sorry, my rabbit. Sorry, I'm just trying to get away from the bunny so she stops doing that to me.
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. With your grandmother, did she have pearl earrings?
No. My Aunt Carol did, though.
This may or may not belong to your aunt or your grandmother. I'm seeing construction paper art.
Grandpa? Yeah. He just would, how he was in the school system, and he would bring me home construction paper, and we had so much construction paper. I had it years after he died, to the point that my children were able to use it, and we would just make cards and draw and fold, and he'd have me practice cutting, and he really pushed the arts with me. So, but literally the construction paper outlasted him.
I'm really moved by that. There's a lot of emotion behind this, and it's very, very loving, and it's very endearing and very sweet. So thank you for sharing that. This might seem like a random detail. I was getting the impression of holding hands, kind of like saying grace. Just to give you a little more detail behind that, while I was getting ready and just kind of grounding and opening up the energy, I just happened to make this gesture, and I felt them take my hands, and I'm like, oh yeah, they're here already.
My grandmother was almost a nun, the one that was a janitor, and she met my grandfather, and they were devoutly Catholic, and we did pray.
Okay.
And they provided stability that I didn't have elsewhere in my life growing up. So it's a good memory.
Yeah. Did someone have a house that had an alley out back?
It was in Albany, but it was like a driveway that went to a detached garage. And I could see how you would think that was an alleyway, the way it was set up.
We mentioned your aunt. I would love for her to come close and speak with us a bit. Would you consider your aunt an intelligent woman?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sharp brain.
Sharp brain with bad decision skills.
That's what she's saying. She's saying I had challenges, and I said with what, and she brought up her thinking process. So for you to say decisions, but I feel her having one of those thinking brains that you can't shut off, and in a way it's brilliant, and in another way it could just be a sword in itself. But she's also showing me that she was adventurous and playful. Oh, let's be silly, or let's just do what you want type of personality. March to your own drum.
Yeah. Which would attract negative attention in the 80s and 90s and made her life very hard.
Yeah, that can present a challenge there as well. Like she was saying, I had challenges, and let's see. She sees you holding back a little bit, hunkering down, and if she can lend any energy to you at all, it would be for you to just do this. Just open up, and know that everything is okay. I think we can get into patterns of anticipating the bad, always looking for the bad, or focusing on those things. And, she's saying, check in, like what's actually happening right now. Right now, you're just sitting in a room. And if your thoughts are tormenting you or triggering emotions in you that don't have to do with anything actually with you right now, to recognize that it's stories and movies. It's your brilliant imagination. And it's like, just notice, and whatever you can do for the self-care to come in. She just wants that for you so much. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've been working on that. I'm kind of stuck.
Yeah.
So I've been asking them to help guide me towards some sort of somatic healing or group of people to be around, because you can only heal so much on your own.
Yeah, it's true. And I think that oftentimes, because some of it is our thought process, right? But it's more than that, because if we just try and focus on our thought process, like say we find affirmation meditation, right? And it's like, oh, this does feel good. This is positive thinking. This is a way to go. But if we don't also address the soul component and our body having stored all this energy as well, there's only so much our brain can work with, But at the same time, realize that when you do the soul work and the energy work, your brain has already created these efficient patterns to thought, and it needs more convincing than just, that's where the affirmations really will start to work, because we're backing it up with our energy as well. We're doing that energy healing, but the brain might not be there yet, because the brain loves those patterns. So if you feel like you're physically, spiritually doing that work, but your brain's not tagging along, it's just because, oh, now I have to kind of convince my brain to get the message as well. And it's okay. It doesn't mean you're backsliding. It doesn't mean you're backsliding at all. It just means that those old routes are still strong and still working. And it's like, that's when you come back into your body and you feel the healing and the grounding, and let your brain follow from there. Does that make sense?
Yes, It's right where I've been at, yes.
Okay. Wonderful. I am feeling some connections with nature. Do you feel that that resonates for you?
Yeah.
So reinforce that connection if that helps as well. And I'm also seeing, besides a rabbit, which we already revealed, owls.
That was going to be one of my questions for you. When I was younger, I knew trees were more alive. And when they said that trees have spirits now, I was one of those things where, duh, I knew that.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why I reached out to you is a lot of hawks. And when I had the healer lady in Woodstock do some work, she mentioned owls too. And I don't see the owls, but the red-tailed hawks and crows are there a lot. And 7-Eleven and 11-11 daily, multiple times in license plates. And that's kind of why I reached out to you, because they're yelling at me in the visual sense, but I don't know what you're saying.
A lot of people realize that owls have a lot of symbology with wisdom. I also feel they have a deep connection with soul work and souls surrounding you.
You just gave me goosebumps. Awesome.
I'm seeing the hawks and the crows and the owls, all of these animals. They're very sharp and they're intelligent, right? I see them as an invitation for you to connect with the flow of nature and energy, and also your ancestry, and your spirit guides that support you. It's kind of like reminders and reinforcement. And go ahead and talk back. Don't just wait for the answer. Go ahead and ask them. And not just, what do you want? It's more like, what is the burning soul question of the moment? You know? Specific guidance. I find that the more specific we can get, the more they can come back with those detailed answers. And I love automatic writing for this. Now, this topic came up recently. Automatic writing isn't going into a trance and coming out of it and realizing your page is full. That's not how it works for me. I will write down my question and the answer will come out, but I know those words are flowing. It's almost like you might even start the sentence for them, but then you'll get the suggestion and you're like, okay, I'm writing down this word. I'm writing down this word. And it kind of just flows. And the more you do it, the more you get used to that process. So if you do want to talk to them that way, I know that the weather's getting chillier outside, but to go in nature and just do some journaling like that, where you write down your question and then you write down their answer. Don't overanalyze, don't overthink it. Don't sit there and go, okay, where is it? That's the wrong mindset to have, because even with mediumship work, I need to get my own brain out of the way and not anticipate, don't try. It just kind of flows and you're just immersed in it. And when we want to connect with our guides, I feel like, it starts where we physically are, and then we send our energy out, and then we just sit in that space and feel that space. And you'll just notice the subtle energy shift come in. You don't chase it. You don't, nothing. And it'll be different every time, but it can be a beautiful thing.
Last summer, I had a little bit more time to practice, and one of them was constantly touching my left shoulder. And a few days after my grandmother passed away, I could feel her spooning, like giving me a hug in bed when I really missed her. So when I am more in connection with that side, I can feel them, like physically feel them.
Yeah. And it's always there. We just live in a very loud world, and our analytical brain is very busy navigating through this world, and it sucks me in too. It really does. But just to give yourself 5-10 minutes to just do breath work and to clear the mind and to feel does wonders, you know. And a lot of people feel that they have blocks, but in truth, my encouragement is we never lose our abilities. It's just what we're focused on. And we know when we're frantic or our brains are going a mile a minute, and we just need to be in a different space. And just like, you know, you always have a soul that soul never loses its abilities. It's innate. So it's just a matter of, you know, what will help support you and your connections to get you there. And if you do feel blocked, it's, you know, it's like, okay, how do I support myself to soften this and to get into the space that I need? And don't get frustrated and don't judge yourself, because both of those emotions, you know, won't help you get there. So we just have to be gentle with ourselves, really.
One of my questions that I had for him was how to do that. Mm-hmm. And your answer to go into nature and journal is something that I very much can do and see myself doing in my mind's eye. So I appreciate that guidance.
Perfect. Now, I do have some messages for you that I wrote down that they want to impart. First thing I wrote is, be kind to yourself. Okay, don't be your own worst enemy. If there's things, you know, we all, you know, stay up too late, don't drink enough water, online too much. Those things are okay, but after a while they do, you know, anything, not getting enough sleep, it drags us down emotionally, mentally, spiritually. So just be kind to yourself. In those physical aspects, how you talk to yourself is very important. Just notice and shift, you know, and there you are. Cultivate and nurture your inner strength, your own inner being, your power, your soul force. Just nurture it. And from there, shape and manifest your world. What, you know, draw it in, build it around you. Love, art, and beauty.
I appreciate that, because that's one of the things that everything I thought that I wanted and manifested is kind of blown up in my face, so to speak. And now I'm in this point where I've been led to isolate and self-reflect, and I don't know what it is that brings joy now. I don't know what it is that I want to manifest, and I also know I need to be very careful about what I ask for. Mm-hmm. And that's where I'm sitting at in life. So the love and art, I need to get back into that, I think. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Break out that construction paper.
Appreciate it.
Well, before we go, do you have a personal ghost story that you would like to share? Listener ghost story.
I do. I kind of wrote it down. So when I was younger, around middle school age, my mother was married to an Albany cop. And at the time of this story, he was in a cast and he was using crutches. We were living in a rural house on top of a hill. It had a very long driveway. It was about 3/4 of a mile, very steep, the type that you needed buckets to keep salt on it. And if you didn't have 4-wheel drive, you were not getting up there. So in this particular house, I'd heard footsteps. We had seen my dog barking at things that didn't exist. But this was the only experience like this. One day while we were outside, my mother was out working, and Jerry and I were, I think I was playing and he was doing yard work or something. And we kept hearing my mom calling, "Jerry, come here. Jerry, come help." But she was screaming it. Like she had been stuck in the Jeep and she couldn't get up the driveway and was doing the mom call. So he hobbled on the crutches on the dirt driveway till we got around the bend so we could see, and there was no car, no mom, no anything. He hobbled all the way down the driveway. We could hear her the whole time until we got down to Route 40. And when we got down to Route 40, even though we looked left and right, she wasn't there. We couldn't call her because cell phones didn't exist, but we heard her for a solid 10 minutes calling for us frantically. And I don't know what that ever was or why, but that's my voice that sounded like my mom ghost story.
Wow.
So, yeah, that was just mean.
Yeah. Oh, mimics are something else. They really are.
Yeah.
And when she came home that night, did she have any difficulty getting up the driveway? So it wasn't even...
Nope, she had no issues in the road, no issues with I think she was driving a Blazer at that point. Like, I have no idea, but in retrospect, like I said, you're hobbling on a crutch on a gravel driveway. It's super steep. Not cool.
Yeah.
So
And you both heard her.
yeah, and I was in middle school. Like we heard them, and we knew the house was haunted, but we had never. You could hear the footprints, and you could, like I said, things moved, and you heard things, but you didn't hear their voices. Mm-hmm. So that was the only time I can recall that. But that's my ghost story.
Oh, it's a good one. I got the goosebumps now. Well, thank you so much. And this has been such a wonderful conversation. And thank you for sharing your time, because I think this is going to resonate with a lot of people as well. And it's wonderful when we can share that together. So thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Would you like a free spirit reading with me and record your reading for the podcast? Sign up for your chance to be selected by visiting italktoghosts.com/guest. And as an added bonus, if you don't want to leave your reading up to chance, I'll let you in on a secret. There's a discount offer to book a private session with me, so you can book a date and time for certain. Visit italktoghosts.com/guest for more details. And with that, dear listener, we've reached the end of this episode of I Talk to Ghosts. I hope you've enjoyed my medium work that I shared with you this evening, as well as those haunting tales of spooky statues. Have you ever had such a paranormal encounter? I would love to hear about it, so please reach out. In the meantime, wherever you wander off to in this world or the next, just remember, come back and visit with me. Have a lovely evening and good night.